I'm Lynn Packer with my 33rd report on Operation Underground Railroad and Tim Ballard. This episode focuses on Russell Ballard, the former acting president of the Mormon Church's Quorum of 12 Apostles. Before becoming a full-time church employee, Russell Ballard was a serial wannabe entrepreneur. He engaged in one failed business venture after another, some involving suspected fraud. His legacy in the business world is mostly made up of get-rich-quick schemes. This video will shed new light on his highest-profile business blunder. The Valley Music Hall, acronym VMH, was a financial disaster. All VMH's spin-off ventures failed as well, compounding the disaster. I'll show how the VMH investment scheme became a penny stock scam, with Russell Ballard running the con, and how VMH's building and land, buried in debt, was purchased by the LDS Church without clear title. But first, as I was completing this report, Russell Ballard passed away, and his funeral was held November 17th. Eulogies portrayed Ballard as having been a successful businessman. The Deseret News reported he once served as president of the Valley Music Hall, which put him in contact with entertainment luminaries of the day, including Art Linkletter, Danny Thomas, Bob Cummings, and others who served as advisors. The music hall eventually went out of business, but President Ballard made sure investors were able to recover their money, which, as we shall see, is not true. The sale of the Valley Music Hall to the church moved forward, with all proceeds from the sale being used to satisfy the financial obligations of the Valley Music Hall Corporation. BYU's Daily Universe said Ballard was involved in several enterprises throughout his professional career, including automotive, real estate, and other investment avenues. He ran his father's car dealership for a time, was later president of the Keystone Securities Corporation, and was also the president of Valley Music Hall in Bountiful, Utah. It was actually in North Salt Lake. The campus paper did not report that Keystone Securities was a penny stock brokerage that the SEC forced him to shut down. The Deseret News and the Tribune at the time of the funeral also mentioned his dealership. Prior to his call to full-time church service, President Ballard was best known as the owner of Ballard Motors, one of the most successful car dealerships in the state. The Tribune reported that Ballard was the top salesman at his father's Nash dealership, left to pursue a career in investments, but in 1956 he returned and became the big wheel at Ballard Motor Company, steering it to greater heights as the country's most successful dealership. So the Deseret News has it as one of the best in the state, the Tribune, the best in the nation. During his funeral, Jeffrey R. Holland, who replaced Ballard as acting president of the 12 Apostles, made the only reference to Ballard's business activity in investments and as an entrepreneur.
I also knew that as a very young man, Brother Ballard had been an entrepreneurial whiz in the business and financial world. And there I was. I couldn't balance a checkbook. And I thought stocks and bonds were what they strapped Charlton Heston into on that slave ship.
Since the November funeral, some of Tim Ballard's alleged victims held a press conference, and Glenn Beck's Blaze Media did another report. The two are related because in both, some of the alleged victims talked about Russell Ballard. Blaze reported before Elder Ballard's death, Tim Ballard repeatedly indicated to others that Elder Ballard had approved the couple's ruse, so long as no kissing on the lips or sexual intercourse was involved, and had even given Tim a special priesthood blessing for it. Tim Ballard insisted that Elder Ballard had sanctioned Janet Russon's readings as well. She's the psychic. Though none had ever heard Elder Ballard himself confirm his blessing on psychics or the couple's ruse. And here's a short clip from the alleged victim's press conference.
He did talk about his relationship with Elder Ballard quite often. Would even say, you know what, I'm going to go have a conversation with Elder Ballard about this. I mean, it was always there, always. In almost every conversation, he talked about what a faithful, God-fearing man he was.
Back to this report and what it will explore. Was Russell Ballard's close personal and financial relationship with accused con man and suspected sex predator Tim Ballard an anomaly? Or was Tim Ballard one of a string of corrupt characters Russell Ballard has dealt with? An obvious question that I pose to LDS Church media relations is whether it would have been inconsistent for President Ballard to have had financial dealings with a disreputable person and or with a shady venture. Here are some of the names and faces that will pop up in this report. Of course, Tim Ballard, Elwood Bachman, Stephen Studdert, Kay Stoker, Bob Cummings, Charles Bisbee, S. Bruce Hanks, Beatrice Sparks, and Paul N. Davis. Business was in Russell Ballard's DNA. He wrote, "I was raised as a businessman, and I ran several different companies." Dallin Oaks, who's now next in line to become president of the church, spoke of the importance of Ballard's business experience.
In the Quorum of the 12, there are people with many different professional backgrounds. Elder Ballard and a few other members of the 12 brought business experience. I will miss his extraordinary judgment and wisdom.
Ballard has been continually portrayed by himself and others as a successful businessman. My missionary service prepared me to be successful in business. A successful businessman, he is engaged in various enterprises, including automotive, real estate, and investments. During his career as a businessman, President M. Russell Ballard managed several successful companies. M. Russell Ballard was not an ordinary businessman. He had a rich and varied business background. He had investments in multiple enterprises, and he was known and respected in the Salt Lake area as a successful entrepreneur, and investors trusted him. Ballard was called as an LDS bishop at age 29 while he was working in Utah's ultra-corrupt penny stock business. It's a calling that not only would have given him some credibility, but also connections, contact with others working in the same field, and with potential investors. 2 bishops in neighboring wards were penny stock brokers, Ballard and Paul N. Davis. Paul Davis's first counselor, attorney Leo Jardine, would become an officer and director for Ballard's Valley Music Hall penny stock company. As this report proceeds, there will be a lot more about Ballard's penny stock dealings. I'm not going to provide a penny stock tutorial in this report. For example, if you don't know what terms like reverse merger or over-the-counter trading are, there will be parts of this report that will be hard to follow. Among online resources are one of my YouTube reports about penny stock scams, Rod Decker's article in Utah Historical Quarterly, the SEC's explanation of microcap, that is, penny stock fraud, and Wikipedia has a concise explanation. A penny stock fraud can also be an affinity fraud at the same time. The LDS Church's website quotes the Securities and Exchange Commission on the topic. Affinity fraud refers to investment scams that prey upon members of identifiable groups such as religious communities. The fraudsters who promote affinity scams frequently are or pretend to be members of the group to gain their confidence, thus the name con man. They often enlist respected community or religious leaders from within the group to spread the word about the scheme by convincing those people that a fraudulent investment is legitimate and worthwhile. The fact Ballard descended from Mormon apostolic royalty would have given many LDS investors confidence in him. He was the great-grandson of Hiram Smith, brother of church founder Joseph Smith. He was the great-grandson of former LDS Church President Joseph F. Smith, and the grandson of two apostles, Hiram M. Smith and Melvin J. Ballard. The car dealership Russell Ballard inherited is linked to the dealership his grandfather was affiliated with. Apostle Melvin J. Ballard was vice president of Ballard Jackson Nash, and his son, Russell Ballard's father, Melvin R. Ballard Sr., was president. This is the new car dealership moved to another location that Russell Ballard inherited. Remember, the Deseret News said President Ballard was best known as the owner of Ballard Motors, one of the most successful car dealerships in the state. And the Tribune said President Ballard steered it to greater heights as the country's most successful dealership. One of Ballard's favorite stories is how he made one big mistake as a new car dealer, but then rebounded. His biographer wrote, "In the late 1950s, Russell won the right to be the Edsel car dealer for Salt Lake. Despite initial surge in sales, however, Edsel was a dismal failure. But Russell would help his dealership recover and become a successful businessman once again." None of that is true. Ballard's dealership was not one of the most successful in Utah. It was not the most successful in the United States. He did not recover from the Edsel disaster and did not become a successful businessman once again. He was never a successful businessman. Ballard turned the dealership into one of the worst in Utah. Here's what actually happened. Teetering on insolvency, Ballard Auto closed. The Edsel franchise itself was sold to another dealer, Harlan Starr, who took over Ballard's building at 633 South Main. Ballard himself said it took years to settle his dealership-related debts. After closing the new car dealership, Ballard and his partner Nate Wade opened the Ballard Wade used car lot at the site of the present-day Nate Wade Subaru. The photo shows Ballard with his father and Wade. Ballard's biography says he convinced Wade they needed to branch out into other businesses. Ballard told the biographers that the two of them had invested together in various enterprises over the years, probably 10 different companies. Wade said, "They were all exciting, all new, and we were just going to bat to try to hit a home run. Some investments were good and others, well, we didn't get out of some fast enough." Ballard became a serial entrepreneur, starting one venture after another, all attempts at hitting a home run and getting rich quick. Two of the first were selling foldable travel trailer franchises and selling swimming pools. Although the used car lot was a sales outlet for the compact camping trailers, the main concept was selling franchises under a multi-level marketing plan. It failed, as did another, the Russ Ballard Swimming Pool Company. They were among the first of Ballard striking out again and again. Another example, Ballard safety suit scam. It was a double sting. The Swedish distributor of a claimed fireproof safety suit conned Ballard. Then Ballard tried to scam Salt Lake City with it. Surprisingly, this story is in Ballard's authorized biography published 2 years ago. It said, "The most outlandish business venture Russ and Nate founded was the safety suit, which was purported to be 100% fireproof. Russ traveled to Sweden, where the suits were manufactured, to see for himself how reliable and fireproof the suits really were. Convinced they were fireproof, he brought 2 suits back to Salt Lake to show the mayor, fire chief, and other community leaders. As Russ and Nate demonstrated the reliability of the 100% fireproof safety suits at the Ballard Wade dealership, the suits failed and caught on fire." That story would come up again recently When Salt Lake's KUTV reported on Ballard's death, they interviewed his biographer, and that was the venture she highlighted.
He had lots of different businesses. I think one of my favorite funny ones was he decided he had heard about a suit for firemen that couldn't catch on fire. And so sent for it, brought it back to the U.S., and then tried to show it to Salt Lake City councilmen and then demonstrate, lit the match, and they all burned up. So he was an entrepreneur trying his hand at several things. And I think he got good laughs along the way and actually had a lot of success.
Here's a partial list of some of Ballard's ventures, excluding the ones I've already mentioned. A live performance theater, that's Valley Music Hall, a uranium mining company, a crop dusting service, an automobile hot and cold drink dispenser, a Mazatlan, Mexico luxury resort, emergency stoves, nationwide campsites, a hotel-motel complex, a tar sands oil extraction system, illustrated Bibles and Books of Mormon, a clothing store chain, family living records, a shopping center, a penny stock brokerage, marine engine conversion company, a convenience store nationwide, a discount buying service, fiberglass boats, gold, silver, and uranium mines, and a galvanic skin tester. Plus this one that I'm highlighting because it's the most recent and is making news. Russell Ballard's and Tim Ballard's joint book publishing and movie-making business. I reported on that venture in my last report. Both deny they had business ties. What was Ballard's success rate? 0, with the possible exception of his Tim Ballard venture. The books may have made money. Besides virtually all being money losers, many had been scraped from the bottom of the business ethics barrel. Now I'm turning back the clock to the 1950s and retracing some of Ballard's entrepreneurial history. After his LDS mission to England, he returned to his studies at the University of Utah. In his words, "Upon the return from my mission, I took up selling cars at Ballard Motor Company as part-time work while I attended the university. I was taking many classes in business and knew that as a part-time salesman, I was earning considerably more money than the professors who were teaching me in the business school. So I said to myself, if I quit school and put full-time effort into sales, I could really become financially secure." A reporter wrote, at age 26, on commission, he was so successful selling cars, he made more money than his father thought he should. His salary was cut. Russ went to his father. "Dad, I love you, but I think I can make more money somewhere else, so I'm going to try." That somewhere else was getting into promoting and brokering penny stock companies, although he never used the term penny stocks when he spoke about it. 3 years ago, I reported on Russell Ballard's penny stock ventures, which spanned decades. Since then, his authorized biography was published in 2021, which includes a few new references to those ventures. The book describes what Ballard did when he left his father's dealership. It says Ballard first partnered with K.L. Stoker, who he met at his father's Nash dealership when he brought it in for service. Russ and K. Stoker organized the Tatro Uranium Company. Although their search for uranium did not produce a profitable mine, other mining ventures were successful, including the Silver King Mines Company, later Alda Gold, and another company formed by Stoker, Latico Mining Company. I reported before on Tatro Uranium, Silver King Mines, Alda Gold, and Latico. But who was K. Stoker? K. Luke Stoker, who was 17 years older than Ballard, pulled Ballard into the penny stock trade and became his mentor and partner. Stoker had already been long engaged in mining ventures and penny stock promotions. Prior to partnering with the younger Ballard, He formed many gold, silver, and uranium mining companies funded by penny stock public offerings, among them Pan American Mining and Development, Western World Industries, and Golden Century Industries. After partnering with Ballard, Shasta Minerals and Chemical Company, Tatro Uranium Company, Latico Mining, Gateway Mining, Silver King Mines, and Alta Gold that had merged with Silver King Mines. The two stayed engaged in penny stock ventures for decades, well after Ballard was made a general authority. I'll start with Tatro. Tatro was one of the ventures the book said their search for uranium did not produce a profitable mine. Tatro uranium was referred to in newspaper classifieds at the time. Even though Ballard was far younger, he was 26, and less experienced, he was president, and Stoker secretary-treasurer. One possible reason was that Stoker's broker's license had been revoked because of previous suspected fraud. Tatro did not spend a lot of time looking for a uranium strike. It did what so many penny stock ventures did. It looked to merge with another company, generate press releases, and boost stock prices. The next year, in 1955, it merged with Bojo Uranium, a merger that was orchestrated by Tatro's 27-year-old president. Very quickly after shareholders voted on the Bojo Uranium merger, Bojo merged with Republic Uranium, which then merged with Rocket Mining Corporation. Then Rocket proceeded to melt down. Rocket directors sued former officers for misleading investors, and the brokerage firm that sold the shares was sued for fraud. As was often the case with penny stocks, investors would lose money, while stock promoters made money. Near the time of Ballard's merger frenzy, Securities and Exchange Commission Commissioner Clarence Adams spoke about penny stocks. He said, "Abuses range from misleading and irresponsible advertising to instances in which the promoters appropriated for themselves most of the money to finance the venture and left for the public practically worthless securities." Ballard's biography says, other mining ventures were successful, including the Silver King Mines Company, later Alta Gold, and another company formed by Stoker, Latico Mining Company. Here's the Silver King Mines chronology. Stoker's brokerage, Cascade Corporation, had its license revoked. His partner, Russell Ballard, then formed his own brokerage, Keystone Securities Corporation. Next, in 1965, Stoker merged his penny stock company, Shasta Minerals Chemical, into Silver King Mines, a deal underwritten by Ballard's brokerage, Keystone Securities. Then, in 1965, the SEC investigated Silver King Mines for suspected illegal conduct. I showed this flow chart in my report 3 years ago. K. Stoker's Cascade brokerage was suspended by the SEC. Ballard then formed Keystone Securities to broker penny stock deals. Keystone then formed the Shasta Minerals Penny Stock Company, which in 1965 merged with Silver King Mines. That was happening while Ballard was trying to make another business, Valley Music Hall, profitable. Then Silver King Mines and Pacific Silver merged into Alta Gold, which was listed on NASDAQ as a volatile penny stock. That occurred after Ballard was made an apostle. I also already reported 3 years ago on Ballard being accused of penny stock fraud and the SEC forcing the closure of his Keystone Securities brokerage, so I won't go into that any further. But I do have a bit more about Silver King Mines. It was led by Stoker and his assistant Einar Eriksson, who made news with his connection to the mine. In the early 1960s, Eriksson was a spokesman for Silver King Mines in Nevada. Penny stock was offered there to the public. He claimed the mine was Nevada's top silver producer. Then Silver King acquired Shasta Minerals in 1965 through a merger. During the same time period, Erickson, according to information he provided the press, was busy staking mining claims, especially in Nevada. The IRS alleged the claims were part of a tax avoidance scam perpetrated mostly by rich Mormons. Years later, the IRS sued Erickson and many who invested in his mining claims, as reported by the Salt Lake Tribune. The IRS alleged investors were donating overvalued claims to the Mormon Church and getting millions of dollars worth of illegal tax deductions. Another bonus for Mormon investors, they could count their donations as tithing in kind, donations to help them qualify for temple recommends. There was also a criminal grand jury investigation. Erickson was indicted, but acquitted by a jury. In 1989, Silver King Mines was merged with Pacific Silver to create Alda Gold, as I showed earlier in the flowchart. Russell Ballard, who was still involved with Alda Gold, had already been an LDS General Authority for 13 years and an apostle for 5. Alda Gold in the mid-90s may have been profitable. It's hard to say because so much information about penny stock companies was hype. In any event, even if profitable, it did not last. Alda Gold stock was delisted, then the company filed for bankruptcy. Ballard's biographer wrote, "Thankfully, Russ had pulled out of the company before the price of gold plummeted. Maybe the timing of his selling his Alda Gold stock was because of good luck, or market savvy, or could it have been based on insider information?" The biography goes on to say other mining ventures were successful. Another company formed by Kay Stoker, Latico Mining Company, traded on the NASDAQ. That infers it was listed on NASDAQ's centralized exchange, which it was not. It says shares produced a substantial profit until the price of precious metals dropped dramatically. Gold dropped from $800 an ounce to less than $50 an ounce. Ballard's biographers did not fact-check what he was telling them. Did the price of gold go from about $800 an ounce to less than $50 an ounce around 1998? A chart shows the price of gold stayed at around $35 an ounce for many years, up until the 1970s. In April 1972, it hit about $50 an ounce and kept going up, never to go that low again. In August of 1980, it went over $600, then went into a steady decline, hitting about $551 an ounce in October 1998. It did not drop to $50 an ounce. Ballard was simply making up figures. Latico at a glance. It was headquartered in Salt Lake City. Its mining projects were in Alaska. The penny stock was traded on the Vancouver Exchange. While Ballard bragged Latico was also listed on NASDAQ, he left out that it was listed on NASDAQ's small-cap penny stock exchange. Even so, it was delisted in 1998 for share prices dropping too low. Latico was dissolved, and its near-worthless shares were acquired by Kinross Gold Corporation. In 1964, Ballard put the biggest venture of his career on the drawing board, the Valley Music Hall. The project began about 2 years after Ballard was forced to shut down his penny stock brokerage. It came after his swimming pool, travel trailer, and fireproof suit ventures fizzled. This video goes beyond my report 3 years ago because it's based on newly discovered records. Records such as those from the Robert and Mary Elliott Cummings papers in Brigham Young University Library's special collections. For example, documents like this that show Russell Ballard's Valley Music Hall venture lost far more money than Ballard was telling reporters at the time. Mary was a model and actress who married movie and television star Bob Cummings. During their marriage, she was his business manager, and she was the one who donated dozens of boxes of business records to BYU. All records from the collection cited or shown in this report are courtesy of the L. Tom Perry Special Collections, Brigham Young University. In addition, this update includes newly released Valley Music Hall property records filed decades ago with the Davis County Recorder's Office. The story they tell is different from the one told by the press at the time. Records like this indicate that when the Mormon Church bailed out Ballard and purchased the financially distressed Valley Music Hall building and land, the Ballard had so muddled the ownership that no one knew for sure who actually owned it. A third newer source of information about the Valley Music Hall fiasco is Ballard's authorized biography, which was published after my 2020 report. I'll begin with what his book says about VMH, and then get to the BYU and Davis County records. The book says Ballard's Music Hall was based on California's Valley Music Theater and its theater in the round concept that had great success. The California theater did not have great success. It ended up in bankruptcy, was sold to the Jehovah's Witnesses for a regional assembly hall, and sold again to a developer who razed it. The book says the intent was to provide good, wholesome, family-friendly entertainment featuring top-flight actors and entertainers. That was true. Ballard could envision huge crowds lining up to enjoy the work of talented Hollywood celebrities. That vision turned out to be a pipe dream, like many of his previous ventures. Longtime friends and business associates were swept up in the tidal wave of his enthusiasm. The biography says he was known as a successful entrepreneur and investors trusted him. Said by October 1964, the Valley Music Hall was incorporated and people began to purchase stock. It was actually months later that Ballard appealed to the public to buy stock, apparently after some wealthy private investors fell through. Construction began December 2, 1964. There was shared optimism among investors that the Valley Music Hall would be a resounding success. Ballard may have pitched the stock as a sure thing. Still quoting the book, Ballard was meeting regularly with a governing board that included Hollywood luminaries such as Art Linkletter, Danny Thomas, Bob Cummings, and Rhonda Fleming. The grand opening was July 19, 1965. With crowds packing the venue nightly, there seemed little reason to worry that the popularity of the VMH would wane. The biography blames two Salt Lake venues for VMH's demise. It says, but in time it became clear that the more venues competing to book the same popular entertainers would create increased costs and dip into profits more dramatically than anyone anticipated. The Salt Palace and U of U Special Events Center. However, both opened in 1969. 4 years after VMH opened. Ballard's biography is revisionist history. Valley Music Hall lost money from day one and was essentially bankrupt well before the Salt Palace and University of Utah Special Events Center opened. The book does not say how and when Ballard first met Art Linkletter and joined him on the Valley Music Hall venture. It merely says Linkletter was more than an advisor, he was a partner. It says, emboldened by the success of the Valley Music Theater in California, Russ and Art decided to work together to build a theater in the round in Utah. Linkletter said, we were good partners. Russ is a hardworking, generous, thoughtful, persistent, and charismatic leader. Art Linkletter was one of television's most successful personalities. He had also partnered with Bob Hope, Walt Disney, and Bob Cummings on business ventures. His show House Party aired on CBS radio and television for 25 years. Its popular segment was Kids Say the Darndest Things. His People Are Funny show was on NBC radio and television 19 years. He was a mega millionaire. He invested across the United States, especially in cattle ranches. He invested in the hula hoop and in Milton Bradley's The Game of Life. He endorsed many products, good and bad. In 1967, he was cleared of scheming to influence Los Angeles to purchase financially troubled Valley Music Theater. He was the main pitchman, not just for the VMH project, but also for Ballard's ventures that were begun to rescue the project. He was the face of VMH, appearing in newspaper ads, attending press conferences and ceremonies and stockholder meetings. He also invested and loaned money, but in very modest amounts. At any time, he could have bailed out VMH by himself by covering all loans, buying all stock, but he didn't. The first news accounts about Valley Music Hall appeared in August 1964. The Deseret News reported, "The theater will probably be known as Valley Melodyland." That turned out to not be the case. Construction will start in 60 days. It started in 120 days, but that was still rather fast. If the theater is a success, a restaurant, motel, and small shopping center will be added. There was ongoing talk about that, but it never happened. The theater will be financed by a group of local businessmen. Among them, besides Mr. Ballard, are L. Bruce Hanks, Melvin R. Ballard Sr., his father, Oman M. Tracy, Nathan L. Wade, William L. Smith, and George M. Conde. At that time, Ballard did not disclose the project would also be heavily funded by bank and personal loans and by individual investors through a public stock offering. One name that popped up at the outset was Bruce Hanks, a name that would vanish as the project progressed. More about Hanks in a minute. The Salt Lake Tribune reported, Mr. Ballard said 10 individuals have subscribed $160,000 for the project. As principal investor, he's not only providing part of the initial money, but also 8 acres for the theater. Ballard was not the principal investor, plus the property was purchased with a bank loan and a note from the seller. He added he hopes financing from California or local loan sources will be completed shortly. Associates include Bruce L. Hanks, owner of the Zenith Insurance Agency. For Hanks, it was a disappearing act. He was the brother of General Authority Marion D. Hanks. He was well connected to political and LDS church leaders. He was a banker and a penny stockbroker. His Beehive Security Company went bankrupt and was sued civilly for alleged securities fraud. He quickly dropped out of Valley Music Hall's site, but he may have worked behind the scenes because fundraising was about to take a sharp turn, that is, a public stock offering that would turn into a penny stock offering through a reverse merger. Ballard arranged high-profile groundbreakers, a Hollywood star, Art Linkletter, and a top leader in the Mormon church, and Eldon Tanner. Utah news outlets did not report that the project began with a $500,000 bank loan, burdening the project with substantial debt at the outset, a debt burden that would continue to grow. Right after the groundbreaking, after borrowing more than $500,000 plus buying part of the land on time with a note, not cash, Ballard launched a statewide advertising blitz asking the public to invest. You can own part of the new $1 million Valley Music Hall, the ad read. The solicitation explained that 600,000 shares would be sold for $1.25 a share, and add to the 400,000 already raised. The grand opening was star-studded. Art Linkletter, Bob Cummings, Rhonda Fleming, and Danny Thomas. Not clearly disclosed at the time, these stars and others also invested in the project and loaned money, adding to the debt load and diluting the value of the public stock offering. Besides Hollywood stars, the Mormon Church's very top leaders participated. Counselors in the First Presidency, and Eldon Tanner, Hugh B. Brown, and Harold B. Lee, also a future president. The president of the Quorum of 12 Apostles, Joseph Fielding Smith, and a future president of the church. And the current church president at the time, David O. McKay. Probably unprecedented, this much high-powered church leadership support for a for-profit venture. Speaks to Ballard's clout. So, in July 1965, the project begins with big debt and big equity. But it will get worse. There will be more borrowing and more stock offered, a dilution of existing shares. Russ Ballard's big venture was almost certain to fail from the beginning. Soon there was more profit dilution. Ballard apparently had no money, no cash to pay producers who had arranged the shows presented at VMH. So he engaged a company named Productions, Inc. to stage the shows in exchange for half of all profits. Poof, half of all profits gone. In this photo, producers Leighton Brill and Leroy Prince are with VMH VP David Castleton, whose family owned a chain of clothing stores. Just 2 months after opening, the headline read, "The Music Hall, so far success." But business reporter Don Woodward seemed skeptical and sought answers about VMH finances. He asked, "Mr. Linkletter and his group form an advisory board for you. Do they have a financial interest also?" Ballard responded, "North Salt Lake Land Company, which they have a 49% interest in, purchased the land and then turned this over to Valley Music Hall in return for stock. They've invested in the land $81,000 in cash and are obligated to put up $50,000 a year for the next 5 years in cash and $25,000 a year for the 5 years thereafter." Next question for Ballard. What is your agreement with Art Linkletter and Productions, Inc.? He answered, also, our operating agreement with Productions, Inc. is to split profits 50-50 with them, but they return 75% of their half after taxes until they match dollar for dollar the investment of Valley Music Hall. When they are equal, we deed to them 50% of the undivided interest in the 10 acres and building here. It meant that the producers committed to buy half the building and property over time and would end up half owners. But what reporters were not told, but now comes to light via documents from BYU's Cummings papers, is that the two producers that comprised Productions, Inc. did not live up to their agreement, causing more financial chaos. By April 1966, Productions, Inc., among other things, had not purchased a 1/2 interest in the properties and had failed to obligate themselves for 1/2 of the mortgage liability. Negotiations resulted in termination of the joint venture agreement. Valley Music Hall status after a few months. It became clear Ballard had absolutely no previous experience managing high finance projects on the scale of VMH. He had done a fantastic PR job, Hollywood star endorsements, top LDS leaders support, extensive free press coverage, but lacking any sound financial foundation, construction never should have begun. It would keep getting worse. Ballard could not keep the grim news entirely secret. He could have if the project had been entirely financed privately by wealthy investors, as first announced. But with public investors, Ballard had to report to shareholders at annual meetings, the first held July 1966. On the day of the first shareholders' meeting, Ballard held a press conference resulting in this story: Music Hall maneuvers for survival. Valley Music Hall lost $280,000 in the first year of operation, M.R. Russ Ballard Jr., president, revealed Tuesday night. He said the $1 million hall will fold completely unless the public rallies to its survival. Mr. Ballard first revealed the financial problems at a press conference 3 hours later, he broke the news in the first annual stockholders meeting at the hall itself. The Davis County Clippers headline, Valley Music Hall faces economic hurdles on first anniversary. Losing $22,000 a week may not be possible to continue business. Ballard considering applying for federal subsidies, making it a nonprofit. But he did neither. He asked shareholders to approve borrowing even more money. Meanwhile, VMH's California counterpart, the one financed in part by Linkletter and Bob Hope, did what ventures normally do when they're losing massive amounts of money. It filed for bankruptcy. The Valley Music Theater in Woodland Hills ran into financial trouble, stopped theatrical productions in September. It's now used for boxing. Ballard had options to stop the bleeding. He could shut down, sell the building and acreage, pay back loans to banks, individual lenders, and property seller, repay investors if any money left. Option 2 is to double down, convert investor stock to freely trading penny stock, issue and sell more stock, borrow even more money from a bank, and launch one or more new spin-off businesses and use their profits to subsidize Valley Music Hall. Ballard picked the second option. It was an enormous bet-the-farm gamble, using mostly other people's money. At that July 1966 meeting, Ballard convinced shareholders to approve issuing a $1.2 million bond to restore working capital and begin a shopping center venture. It meant more debt. Davis County property records show First Security Bank loaned VMH $400,000 via a second trust deed bond issue. It was not the $1.2 million shareholders approved. Remember, Prudential had the first trust deed for $500,000. My guess is the First Security Bank, given existing problems with Valley Music Hall, would not lend money for building the shopping center that investors approved. There was another part of Ballard's rescue plan he may not have told reporters about. Ballard filed with the SEC to trade VMH stock over the counter as a penny stock. Buying and selling stock could be another revenue source. Statements Ballard gave to the press went from might have to shut down to the outlook is bright. Suddenly, money was rolling in, but borrowed money, not from ticket sales. Ballard fibbed, telling reporters the outlook for 1967 is great. The story said, Mr. Ballard said more than $150,000 of the theater's recently authorized $400,000 bond issue has been sold, and that bond sales will be open to the general public. The same article said a new producer, 28-year-old Michael Price, who had been the stage manager, had been hired without mentioning the previous production company defaulted on its contract. And, by the way, Price would not last long either. Price gave an interview right after he quit, a few months after he was hired. The reporter wrote, Mike says he became executive producer by attrition, moving into the job as producers came and went. He said the failure of VMH as a producing theatrical organization is not because of the people of Salt Lake Valley. The errors that propelled this theater into the situation it finds itself in are poor management. He said the principal weakness was no salesman on the street selling group tickets. He said he was told VMH could not afford them. Meanwhile, Ballard began launching new business ventures, hoping to strike it rich. One of the first involved franchising a hot and cold beverage dispenser that would fit under the dashboard of a car. It was called the Car Bar, a product that would dispense hot and cold drinks inside a car at the push of a button. Ballard's closest Hollywood partners were in on the franchise concept, a business plan that came to light in the BYU documents. The BYU papers, the ones donated by Bob and Mary Cummings, describe a 1966 meeting at the Hotel Utah. The note says Ballard thought the car bar idea had a lot of potential. The plan was for Bob Cummings to use his movie and TV stardom to promote it. Meeting notes indicate the hope was to sell 50 franchises at $10,000 each to bring in a quick $500,000. Some classified ads were run in Utah papers, but the venture failed. Undaunted, Ballard still kept trying to knock one out of the park. His strike-it-rich attempts accelerated to a dizzying pace. Car Bar was merely the first in a wave of attempts to rescue Valley Music Hall. Most, like Car Bar, involved franchising. VMH would not sell products and services directly, but grant franchisees the rights to sell VMH's products and services. Some involved multi-level marketing, door-to-door sales, and classified ads. Two of Ballard's Hollywood VMH partners, like Art Linkletter and Bob Cummings, also partnered with Ballard. Linkletter and Cummings were experienced franchisors. Ballard could draw from their experience. Art Linkletter and his son Jack, who managed his father's investments, were marketing their universal franchising concept at the time. It sought investments between $7,000 and $30,000 up front and was also a penny stock scheme. Bob Cummings had his own franchising business. One of the sponsors of Cummings' hit television series, Love That Bob, was his own multi-level marketing franchise for nutritional supplements, NutraBio. After starring in movies like King's Row with Ronald Reagan, Cummings produced his own television show, Love That Bob, that did very well in the ratings. His TV career began to ebb somewhat with the new Bob Cummings show. Here's a clip from his hit show.
Love That Bob, starring Bob Cummings.
Yeah, I'll get it. Hello?
Hello, darling. I just called to say thank you again for last night.
The girl you were with last night.
Marion, you doll.
This is Gwendolyn.
When it came to business, Bob Cummings was rather unprincipled, not slow to make false claims about his supplements and to infer that franchisees selling his products could get rich. Cummings claimed to take at least 174 vitamins a day to keep looking years younger than his real age. He retained an astrologer who mapped out his day, charting upcoming events, sometimes hour by hour. He became addicted to methamphetamines, which at first he thought was a vitamin concoction being injected. Cummings eventually ran into an FDA buzzsaw. His nutritional supplement pyramid program was cut down. He was charged with making false claims. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration seized stocks of NutraBio products over false and misleading labeling claims. Later, Bob Cummings, Inc., a similar nutritional supplement venture, was prosecuted in California as a pyramid scheme, making its profits from recruiting investors rather than from product sales. After that, Cummings engaged with the infamous Holiday Magic suspected fraud. Cummings had also engaged in the Holiday Magic Cosmetics multi-level marketing fraud. The pyramid scheme also involved suspected securities fraud, which drew fire from the SEC as well as the FTC. Holiday Magic litigation was going on as Cummings was engaged with Ballard and Valley Music Hall. In Utah, Ballard, Linkletter, and Cummings devised a bigger, grander multi-level marketing concept that involved the sale of inspirational messages on vinyl records. Mary Cummings took notes during a meeting with Ballard that show they at least discussed a nutritional supplement, MLM, to save Valley Music Hall. Instead, they decided to market family educational record album franchises. Hope replaced gloom as Ballard announced a new venture, the Family Achievement Institute, often referred to as FAI. The Deseret News was first to report the new rescue plan for Valley Music Hall, a franchise concept to sell record albums, vinyl recordings that would strengthen families. They would be sold by an international network of distributors. The newspaper reported Art Linkletter was contracted to narrate a series of family living record albums. There would be other celebrity narrators. A Linkletter company would press the vinyl records. Ballard pitched the program as one of the answers to family problems. It would be distributed through direct selling, that is, multi-level marketing. Distributorships would be set up in every state, even internationally. Ballard said the expansion into marketing of products is a new venture for the Valley Music Hall. A letter Ballard sent to Bob and Mary Cummings revealed Family Achievement Institute's importance. If we can generate sales of 25 to 30,000 albums a year, all our financial problems at Valley Music Hall will be over. That was the plan. All of our financial problems at Valley Music Hall will be over. FAI could deliver the home run VMH needed to survive. Advertisements placed in LDS magazines gave the program an aura of church support. The program was billed as the greatest service and selling opportunity of a lifetime. The ads identified the famous narrators. The album scripts were ghostwritten by several authors, including Stephen R. Covey, who would go on to fame with his 7 Habits book, and Beatrice Sparks, a BYU professor who would later write a bestseller, Go Ask Alice. It was later revealed that Sparks' book, supposedly nonfiction, was fiction. Writer Rick Emerson published an expose titled Unmask Alice. His book included a section on Sparks' work for Family Achievement Institute. Emerson wrote, "Sometimes it seemed like all of Utah was one giant hustle, everyone selling soap back and forth. In 1967, a handful of businessmen launched their own version, something called Family Achievement Institute, a multi-level marketing scheme involving vinyl albums of parenting advice. Distributors had to buy the records from FAI up front, eating the whole cost, then resell them to friends or family or anyone. You had to resell them to make back your initial investment of $3,000. In 1967, that was nearly 40% of a family's yearly income, and more than a new car." Emerson went on to write, FAI bought giant magazine ads, packed them with jump-out phrases. Financial success can be yours with an FAI franchise, a product that is needed and wanted in virtually every home in America. Advertisements for FAI ran all over America, especially in Mormon-heavy areas. Even rural saints got the message via Improvement Era, the church's official magazine. Ballard engaged a Charles Bisbee, an Arizona native living in Oklahoma, to market Family Achievement records. A newspaper article said sales of the program will be handled by International Marketing Corp., Norman, Oklahoma, Ballard said. IMC was founded by Charles Bisbee. Bisbee's International Marketing Corporation pitched FAI franchises in classifieds run across the country. One of them noted that a $2,500 investment was required. Ads running in the Improvement Era referenced IMC as the distributor. Ballard wrote an article for the church's Instructor magazine, an article that noted he is president of the Family Achievement Institute and the organizer of several businesses in Salt Lake City, Utah. The improvement era FAI ads ran for almost a year. How true were the ads' claims? In one of them, Linkletter asks, "Can you make big money selling happiness?" He says, "Yes, you can make a great deal of money dealing in family happiness." Linkletter claimed franchisees could earn 3 times their initial investment in 1 month. The ads drew the attention of the FTC. The Federal Trade Commission ordered IMC to cease and desist making false claims. The FTC was critical that recruited distributors' franchisees were required to invest a substantial sum of money as a condition, that it falsely claimed distributors would encounter no difficulty selling products, and falsely claimed distributors were uniformly successful and enjoyed substantial income. Family Achievement Institute distributor Charles Bisbee, in connection with another of his programs, filed for bankruptcy in 1983 and was indicted for fraud in 1987. Perhaps the most brazen aspect of Russell Ballard's plan to save Valley Music Hall was to merge it with his more newly created Family Achievement Institute. Ballard had quietly, perhaps secretly, created FAI as a public penny stock company whose shares were traded over the counter. Then he executed what is called a reverse merger, or takeover of the private VMH company, so that its shares could also be traded over the counter. The two became one company, Family Achievement Institute. BYU's Cummings collection has a letter on FAI letterhead that Ballard sent VMH shareholders. It avoided using the term merger, instead calling it a name change. The letter said, "At the stockholders' meeting on October 28, 1968, the name of the company was changed to Family Achievement Institute from Valley Music Hall. Please refer to the new name from now on." It's true there was a name change, but it was far more than that. VMH stock became FAI stock that could be freely traded over the counter. The letter told old VMH stockholders that it's not necessary to send in your Valley Music Hall Inc. stock certificates for transfer. The company will honor your present certificates. At that point, the stock was vulnerable to a pump and dump scheme. Fraudsters could spread false or misleading information to create a buying frenzy that would pump up the price of the stock. I'm going to interrupt the chronology for a minute and tell you in advance what was going to happen. This flowchart shows that the VMH and FAI merger was the first of a series of mergers. Next, Family Achievement merged with Intermountain Industries. Then Intermountain merged with Dynapack, Inc. Then after that, it became a gold mine fraud. All this would happen before the LDS Church bailed out Ballard when it bought the Valley Music Hall's building and land. With that merger preview out of the way back to December 1968, Ballard wrote the Cummings a letter that said, "As you're aware, we've had an extremely difficult time since the opening of the theater on July 19, 1965. We're behind on our payments to Doc Mathis on the land. He was the seller. However, he is not pressing for payments. Since entering into the marketing and sales of Family Achievement Institute product, it has given us new life and hope for the company." The letter goes on to say, "Because of the potential that Family Achievement Institute holds, the Valley Music Hall stock, which is now known as Family Achievement Institute, has increased in value and is trading at approximately $5 a share." That would have been a huge jump in share value. The stock at that time was practically worthless. How could it be selling for $5 a share? I had an accountant review FAI financial statements that were in the BYU collection. He believes at that time, December 1968, the stock had dropped in actual value by at least 50%, maybe more. and could not have gone up 300%. Remember, Ballard said the shares had sold for $5 each. The actual share value less than 75 cents each. The likelihood of fraud was extremely high. While Valley Music Hall and Family Achievement Institute were losing a lot of money, someone was making a tremendous amount of money through stock trades. The letter goes on. Ballard wrote, "We made a deal to sell 50,000 shares of our Valley Music Hall stock under an option arrangement with some brokers who have an interest in our company and have helped make the value of our stock increase. This option was granted to them for 1 year at $1.50 a share. We're discussing some interesting merger possibilities." More mergers? That's penny stock promoter talk. Where exactly was the stock being traded, that is, bought and sold? Not on any stock exchange. It was being traded in Ballard's office. A January 1969 letter said, "The stock transfer department is now located in downtown Salt Lake City at 814 South Main Street. Mrs. Leon Rosevier handles our stock and bond transfer department. It's also the office of FAI and for Ballard and Company, Ballard's own investment company." The January 1969 letter goes on to describe 2 new Ballard ventures. During the past few days, negotiations have been underway with 2 companies for a 50% participation in the development of a chain of camping and family recreation centers. Plus, in connection with the FAI membership program, a national wholesale buying service has been developed. All FAI members can purchase products through the FAI wholesale buying catalog at substantial savings. The camping site chain was marketed much like the family improvement franchises, assisted by Art Linkletter celebrity, pitched as a way to riches. Ads were published in classifieds across the country. The campsite venture fell flat. FAI's buying service was promoted in a few display advertisements, carried an Art Linkletter endorsement, but seems to have existed only on paper. In late 1969, Family Achievement Institute, by then certainly insolvent, announced it was acquiring Utah's entire Castleton's clothing store chain by way of an exchange of stock. It would have been a reverse merger that would have taken Castleton's public. Art Linkletter was there for the press conference, as was Russell Ballard, plus Richard and David Castleton. David was also FAI treasurer at the time. At the press conference, Richard Castleton said that the affiliation with FAI would enable Castleton's to pursue its expansion program, both in Utah and elsewhere. Looks like Castleton's expected to finance expansion through stock sales. But as far as I could determine, the announced merger did not take place. In any event, several years later, Castleton's filed for bankruptcy. By the way, Ballard's biography not only makes no mention of the purported Castleton merger, there's also nothing about David Castleton, who played a prominent role with both VMH and FAI. In December 1969, Russell Ballard issued a press statement in the wake of rumors about Valley Music Hall. The Deseret News said, "The statement was issued to halt rumors regarding the future of the Family Achievement Institute, which controls Valley Music Hall." The public had not been clearly told there had been a reverse merger to turn Valley Music Hall into a penny stock company via Family Achievement Institute, which had already begun acquiring other companies. The Deseret News quoted Russell Ballard, who made somewhat of an admission. Mr. Ballard emphasized the importance of this relationship, since the Family Achievement Institute is a public corporation and is planning the expansion of its operations through the acquisition of several substantial companies to be presented to its stockholders early in 1970. Ballard avoided telling the press that Family Achievement Institute's main business activity, franchising family educational record albums, was near death. and that it was going to engage in another reverse merger to bestow its penny stock status on another company. It was Robert Peterson who was in charge of album sales who pronounced the program dead. He said, "We created a very attractive, relevant, credible product and a quality delivery system. But the market was not willing to spend approximately $300 to help strengthen the family." With its main product never taking hold, Family Achievement Institute continued acquiring stock in other companies. 51% of Utah's Ballwood Incorporated. It had rights to the major oil company extraction of oil from tar sands. 81,000 shares of Canada's Venata Exploration Limited. Its stock traded over the counter on the Vancouver Exchange. 250,000 shares of Carriage Mark Limited of Canada, that was a chain of convenience stores, and 132,000 shares of Ogden's Dolphin Marine Incorporated. Once again, Ballard bit off more than he could chew when he attempted to develop a resort in Mazatlan, Mexico. The resort endeavor began while he was still trying to save Valley Music Hall, and continued after the building and property were sold to the LDS Church. He pushed the Mazatlan project almost to the time he went into church service as a mission president. His official biography explains, "When it became clear that the Family Achievement Institute was not going to reach sales quotas or expectations, Art and Russ dropped the FAI and teamed up with another entrepreneurial project. This time, it was real estate development in Mazatlan. Land development was a far cry from Valley Music Hall and packets to help families, but it had financial potential." The book tells the story of Ballard's association with millionaires and billionaires. Linkletter approached billionaire D.K. Ludwig and others with large discretionary funds, such as James Kerr, president of the AFCO Corporation. Russ was invited to join Linkletter and his wealthy friends on a corporate jet as they flew from Los Angeles to Mazatlan. On the plane to Mazatlan, the billionaire turned to Russ and asked, "What do you do, Mr. Ballard?" Not having anything to say that came close to buying an island or a multi-million-dollar acquisition, Russ replied, "I don't do very much. I have a wife and a family of 7 great children. I have a wonderful companion. We know where we came from before we were born. We know why we are here on earth, and now where we can go if we are willing to follow the Lord Jesus Christ." The biography does not say how the billionaire reacted, nor does it note that the billionaires, after seeing the property, did not invest, but Ballard continued for years using so-called Mormon money. In 1972, 3 years after Ballard flew to Mazatlan with the billionaires, the Arizona Daily Star reported that Linkletter's and Ballard's group was expected to begin construction the next month and be completed within 18 months. The paper wrote, "A syndicate of U.S. investors expects construction to start in 3 months on the first phase of a projected $70 million complex on Stone Island Beach, 3 miles from the airport toward town. Art Linkletter owns part of Stone Island, which isn't an island but a stretch of beautiful beachfront. The project will be financed mostly by Mormon money from Utah, Iowa, Colorado, and Texas." Also in 1972, the Deseret News reported, "Mexico is interested in increasing U.S. investment in its country," a high-ranking Mexican banker said in Salt Lake City. Carlos Suarez was in Salt Lake to meet with Salt Lake businessman Russell Ballard, who was involved with some associates in developing property south of Mazatlan. Several months later, another Deseret News article. Russ Ballard, Salt Lake developer, and his associates have acquired 856 acres with 3.5 miles of beach. The first 9 holes of an 18-hole golf course will be playable soon, and the road from the highway to the area will soon be finished. The area will be subdivided, and condominiums will be built. The area is near the airport, Ballard said of the project, which has been in the making for 4 years. 23 years after Ballard was quoted in that article, a resort with condos and a golf course was opened at that site. It's called Estrella del Mar. Ballard had nothing to do with it. His Mazatlan project had fizzled 2 decades earlier. The Arizona Republic had a report. It said, an 800-acre resort was developed by Arizona Development Partners. It cost $500 million. The partners took over a barely begun resort project that had sat idle for 10 years after a series of developers had failed to develop the property. Rather suddenly, the LDS Church decided it needed a regional center, a large meeting place. In August 1970, it was disclosed that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has signed a letter of intent to purchase the Valley Music Hall for an undisclosed sum. The theater on the Round was originally valued at $1.5 million when it opened in 1965. FAI stockholders needed to approve the sale that Ballard had negotiated. About 3 months later, stockholders did approve. The Deseret News Story said, 260 Valley Music Hall shareholders voted overwhelmingly in favor of the sale of the music hall to 7 Davis County LDS stakes for $775,000. There was more breaking news buried in the story. Stockholders approved a name change from Family Achievement Institute to Intermountain Industries, Inc., also approved a share increase from $2 million to $5 million. So instead of shutting down FAI after selling its main asset, Ballard executed yet another reverse merger. It included another 3 million shares of penny stock he could sell. Intermountain Industries was a murky entity of Ballard's creation that had a very short lifespan. Whatever it was, it fairly quickly did another reverse merger, this time with a well-established Utah company, Dynapack Inc. That enabled Dynapack to take over the 5 million shares of stock for trading over the counter. But stockholders would vote to increase shares again, from 5 million to 10 million. The news story also said, last year the music hall building was sold to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That was not quite true. Reporters failed to check Davis County property records. The music hall sale had yet to be finalized. It appeared that Dynapack, in March of 1971, owned the building. February 28, 1972. That's the actual date the church took ownership of Valley Music Hall. Why did it take 15 months to record a deed, and even then it was a quitclaim deed, not a warranty deed with title insurance? And why the long list of grantors, all of whom may have had some claim of ownership? There is Dynapack, Intermountain Industries, Family Achievement Institute, Valley Music Hall, and Valley Hills Development Corporation. Did it take all of them to grant ownership to the church? To this day, it's not certain the church has clear title. I requested comment from the church in an email. I explained what the facts in my upcoming report would show. Valley Music Hall lost far more money than the press was being told at the time. Valley Music Hall stock prices may have been manipulated by brokers as part of a classic penny stock pump and dump scheme. Given multiple mergers prior to the church acquiring the Valley Music Hall building and property, it was unclear who had ownership. The actual purchase occurred more than a year after the church announced in 1970 that it bought Valley Music Hall. Even then, after the long delay, the church never acquired clear title, that there is no warranty deed or title insurance provided, just a very odd quitclaim deed. The church had no response. It's near certain the church would have known about Ballard's wheeling and dealing. During its title search, church real estate experts would have learned all about the reverse mergers, the acquisitions of flaky companies, and transactions impacting millions of shares of stock. In addition, it's highly probable the church paid far, far more than the $775,000 announced to the press, maybe several times that amount, all to bail out Russell Ballard, a man church leaders at the time had big plans for. I'll turn again to Russell Ballard's official biography. It says in 1973, no exact date, but certainly at a time top church leaders would have heard the Valley Music Hall financial horror stories, Ballard got a call. President N. Eldon Tanner called, asking Ballard and his wife to meet for an exploratory interview. It was to determine his willingness to serve as a mission president. But President Tanner was aware of Russ's rich and varied business background, and he advised him to spend the next year putting his financial affairs in order so he could accept the call. The book says the financial challenge was not an ordinary assignment, for 45-year-old M. Russell Ballard was not an ordinary businessman. He had investments in multiple enterprises. Putting financial affairs in order must have included putting together a new venture. In 1974, the year he would be called as a mission president, Russell Ballard formed a new company, Emergency Products, Inc., along with George Conde and his father. It was related to his Dynapack, Inc. company. Dynapack, Inc., among other products, made portable wood and coal-burning stoves, which sold well during the 1974 energy crisis. Besides franchises, the stoves themselves were sold at Ballard's business office and at the Ballard Wade used car lot. Still, Dynapack stock sold for only a few cents a share. That same year, Dynapack acquired the financially troubled Hydro-Swift Boat Company. Hydro-Swift did not turn Dynapack into a successful venture. Amid his new ventures, Ballard was called as the LDS Church's Ontario, Canada mission president. He went onto the church's payroll and never left church employment, but he continued connections to businesses and penny stock ventures. Dynapack, the grandchild of Valley Music Hall, Inc., soldiered on as a penny stock company trading over the counter. A business paper called it a jack of all trades, master of none. It struggled financially for years, stock selling at less than 30 cents a share. In 1977, its main lender, Utah Valley Bank, demanded payment for a $350,000 note, forcing Dynapack into liquidation. Dynapack, reduced to almost a shell, looked for a private company that wanted to do a reverse merger. So what happened to the Dynapack shell? In July 1984, Dynapack, after being dormant for several years, was reactivated by a merger with Sedona Corp. Of California. It's doubtful Russell Ballard had any direct involvement with the merger, but he may have owned some shares. Dynapack acquired the Golden Gulch gold mine in New Mexico. A geologist falsified an assay claiming the mine could produce $7.8 million in gold a month. Promoters executed a pump-and-dump scheme. Dynapack stock skyrocketed from 5 cents a share to $8 a share. Dynapack's owner was convicted of securities fraud, and a Salt Lake transfer agent was charged with aiding and abetting. A remnant of the original Dynapack still exists today with the same name. But there's no longer any connection with the infamous public company. A spokesman told me the old Dynapack that was publicly traded over the counter went bankrupt. He said the new current Dynapack is privately held. Ballard's involvement with penny stock promoters continued even after being made an apostle. His biography refers to Stephen Studdert, seen here with Ballard. Studdert was highly experienced in politics and business. He served on the White House staff as an advisor to United States Presidents Ronald Reagan, Gerald Ford, and George H.W. Bush. Studdert and Ballard served together on Utah's 1996 Statehood Centennial Commission. In an interview with This People magazine, Ballard talked about Studdert. The article said, Elder Russell Ballard, a personal friend of Studdert, said wealth can be a terrible snare in life or a way to bless others. Steve is not a rich man, but I think his great wealth is his time given to his community. Some of Studdert's penny stock ventures: Phonics Corp. Phonics lost more than $100 million while its founders became wealthy. Canyon Gold, Defense Technology, and KLS Enviro Resources. Studdert was CEO of KLS Enviro. Ballard Investment Company acquired as many as 1.6 million shares in Studdert's company. Zion's Bank $710,000 loan may have been involved with the investment. SEC filings indicate Russell Ballard's son Craig and son-in-law Brad Brower participated in the investment. Another Ballard penny stock investment after becoming a general authority: the Biomeridian electrodiagnostic device tests galvanic skin resistance to an applied electrical current. It purportedly detects energy imbalances. They're often used to recommend vitamins, nutritional supplements to treat supposed ailments. The website Quackwatch calls it a scam. Scientologists use a similar device called an e-meter that operators use to supposedly detect whether a person has been relieved of spiritual impediments of past experiences. Ballard-related entities made loans and acquired 200,000 shares. By 2000, Ballard Investments owned 1.9 million shares. Biomeridian stock was delisted in 2003. The share price was at a fraction of a cent. I already mentioned that Ballard's involvement with his mentor Kay Stoker's Alda Gold and Latico mining companies extended well into his tenure as an LDS General Authority. In turn, Ballard may have become a mentor to his son-in-law, who became a penny stock entrepreneur. Son-in-law Brad Brower was chairman of the penny stock company Prime Resources Corp., which provided long-distance discount services before undergoing several mergers and name changes. My previous reports detailed Brad Brower's connections with his father-in-law's business partner, Tim Ballard. Brower was reportedly Russell Ballard's go-between with regard to Tim Ballard's book publishing and movie-making ventures, which began under the auspices of the Utah company Liberty 89. Liberty 89's website showed Brad Brower with his wife, Russell Ballard's daughter, as a board member, along with former OUR President John Moreland and Ken Krogh. It also shows Hugh Vail as a team member and Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes as a course instructor. It's been in the news. Sherston Stockwell, once Operation Underground Railroad's development director, told criminal investigators about a meeting she attended with Tim Ballard at Thanksgiving Point. The meeting was attended by two Liberty 89 principals, Ken Krogh and Hugh Vail, plus Tom Harrison, who purportedly believes Tim Ballard is a prophet. Stockwell told investigators they claim to have visions and special intelligence of the Second Coming. Tim Ballard was called by God to restore America to the covenant. Tim was very verbal about Elder Russell Ballard's involvement behind it. The same Ken Krogh who served with Brad Brower on the Liberty 89 board became an executive for Tim Ballard's Spear Fund after Tim was forced to resign from OUR. Also, Krogh is reportedly very close with Russell Ballard, besides his connection with Brad Brower. Wrapping up, and this will take a few minutes, did becoming a full-time church employee turn Russell Ballard into a good businessman? Russell Ballard became Mormonism's main marketing man by way of its missionary program. He oversaw the deployment of advertising and public relations messaging to spread the gospel message and to influence the public's perception of Mormonism. A lot of it was about logos, catchphrases, and branding. Missionaries were being rejected because of what Ballard saw as myths about Mormonism. He helped move the church's PR program, its public affairs department, under the missionary program. There he would direct major multi-million-dollar PR initiatives to combat what he said in an ABC interview, the public's misconceptions about Mormonism.
We want to be understood and not misunderstood, and people are defining us in the wrong way. They're defining us without having the facts.
How do you feel you're being defined?
Oh, I think we get defined as polygamous still. We get defined as being discriminatory against blacks still.
Ballard was one of the church's masterminds behind its support of California's Proposition 8 to ban gay marriage. "It's my hope that you will engage," Elder Ballard said. "It's my hope that you will go viral in support." The anti-gay marriage position became a PR disaster. The millions spent worsened its image. Ballard bungled 3 multi-million-dollar PR campaigns, much like he bungled his penny stock ventures. They not only failed to improve public perception of Mormonism, they reinforced the use of the terms Mormon and LDS that he later decided was part of the problem. Ballard helped lead the PR and rebranding campaign to eliminate the use of the nicknames Mormon and LDS. The $1 million-plus crusade came after church president Russell Nelson announced the nicknames offend God. He emphasized that we need to use the correct name of the church. He says that if we use nicknames like Mormon, it's a major victory for Satan. President Nelson and Ballard wanted members, media, and others to use the faith's full name, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So after Ballard's 3 major image campaigns, followed by promoting use of the church's full name while discouraging use of the nicknames, how was it working out? 5 years after promoting the church's full name, a 2023 Pew Research poll shows Americans have a far more positive view of Jews, Catholics, and mainline Protestants than of Latter-day Saints. Latter-day Saints had the lowest favorability of any religious group and the second highest unfavorability, behind only evangelicals. The very least known of Ballard's public relations disasters was a feature film about Jesus that cost the church millions of dollars to produce. As I reported in a May YouTube video, it's the least known because other church leaders thought the director's cut was so bad they canceled the movie's release. But Russell Ballard's greatest PR catastrophe began playing out shortly before his death and will continue for months, perhaps years to come, as more surfaces about his relationship with accused swindler and accused sex offender Tim Ballard. That's the end. Thanks for watching. For comments and corrections, please email at lpacker636@gmail.com.